The summer of 1469 is a season of ghosts, shadows, and the cold, metallic smell of impending iron. This atmosphere of dread marks the beginning of the Battle of Edgecote. On the windswept moor of Danes Moor, two armies stand at a precipice that will soon swallow the peace of an entire generation. One force, a sea of 15,000 Welsh spears, stands isolated on a high ridge, their banners snapping in a sharp Northamptonshire breeze. They face an impossible imbalance, an army of 20,000 northern rebels who have risen like a fever from the Yorkshire soil. This is the moment a single fatal mistake transforms a minor skirmish into a national slaughter. Before the sun sets on this valley, the flower of the Welsh nobility will be harvested by the axe. A king will be taken captive in his own land, and the most powerful man in England, the kingmaker, will finally reveal his hand. This is the story of the Battle of Edgecote, the day a kingdom was shattered by the sound of its own name. We are witnessing the total systemic collapse of the Yorkist regime, a fratricidal rupture where the distance between a throne and a scaffold is measured only by the speed of a single betrayal. The morning mist clings to the River Cherwell like a shroud. William Herbert, the Earl of Pembroke, tightens the straps of his gauntlets, his eyes fixed on the opposing ridge. For 10 years, Herbert has been the iron fist of King Edward IV in Wales, a man who rose from the minor gentry to become an earl through the sheer, calculated brutality of his service. Beside him, his brother Richard grips a massive poleaxe, a weapon already legendary in the mountain taverns of Abergavenny. But today, the steel feels unnaturally heavy in his hands. The air is thick with the scent of wet wool and wood smoke, yet there is a silence where there should be the rhythmic thrum of bowstrings. Just hours ago, at a roadside inn in Banbury, a petty dispute over lodgings and the attention of a local barmaid saw their ally, the Earl of Devon, march his 10,000 archers away in a fit of pique. Herbert, a veteran of 10 campaigns who broke the last Lancastrian strongholds, is now a commander of infantry without a single longbow to cover his advance. Herbert roars the order to lock shields as the first rebel arrows arc across the grey sky, a whistling death that proves the Robin of Redesdale insurgency is no peasant rabble, but a professional machine of war. These northern rebels move with a chilling, disciplined coordination, led by border knights who have spent their lives guarding the Scottish marches. They march under the mask of a folk hero to hide the treason of the Earl of Warwick, the architect of this chaos who once placed the crown on Edward's head. From the high ridge of Thorpe Mandeville, the rebel commanders watch the Yorkist royalists huddled on Warden Hill. They do not need to charge yet, they have the archers, and Herbert has only his pride. The Welshmen endure the barrage in a silence broken only by the thud of wood on leather and the occasional cry of a fallen man. Every minute that passes, the royalist position becomes more untenable. The Welshmen are being picked apart, arrow by arrow, unable to strike back or even see their tormentors clearly. The topography of Danes Moor is a natural trap, 3 hills surrounding a spacious plain that is periodically wet and marshy. Behind the royalist lines, the province of Wales lies undefended, and the king waits at Nottingham, unaware that his primary shield is being shattered by a ghost. Richard Herbert mutters a prayer as he leans on his poleaxe, remembering a mother's curse he once heard in the mountains, a warning that a day of iron would come for his family. The trap is ready to snap shut. The tension on the hill is a physical weight, pressing the breath from the Welsh spearmen. They are the sons of the marches, men who grew up in the shadow of castles, yet here they feel the vulnerability of a lamb in the high grass. William Herbert knows the calculus of the battlefield is turning against him with every heartbeat. He looks to the south, praying for the sight of Devon's banners, but the horizon remains empty. The Earl of Devon, nursing his wounded pride, has stripped the army of its reach. Without archers, the Welsh are a body without arms, capable only of taking blows, never delivering them. The northern longbowmen, heirs to the legends of Agincourt, draw their strings to their ears and release in a rhythmic, terrifying cadence. The arrows do not fall as a rain, but as a storm, finding the gaps in the plate and the joints in the harness. Herbert sees his best squires falling, their blood soaking into the parched summer grass. He knows that to stay on the height is to die. "Down the hill! Now!" Herbert's voice cracks like a whip, shattering the paralyzing dread of the barrage. He has no choice. To stay on the hill is a slow death. To charge into the valley floor is a desperate gamble on the strength of Welsh steel. The spearmen roar, a guttural wave of sound that echoes off the Thorpe Mandeville ridges as they descend into the marshy floor of Danes Moor. The world becomes a storm of motion as the two sides lock in a grueling struggle. The deafening roar of the melee is answered by the sickening crack of breaking polearms. The line begins to buckle under the weight of the northern host, who drop their bows for bills and axes as the distance closes. It is a slaughter of inches. The ground, periodically wet and marshy, turns into a sucking mire of mud and gore. Voices of the dying are lost in the clang of steel on steel, and the prestigious Herberts find themselves fighting for their very existence in the mud. Amidst this chaos, Sir Richard Herbert becomes a paragon of medieval martial prowess. With his massive poleaxe, he carves a path through the rebel ranks that defies the laws of probability. He twice, by fine force, passes through the entire body of his adversaries and returns to his own lines without a mortal wound. He is a whirlwind of steel, his weapon rising and falling with the rhythm of a thresher. Seeing this, the Welsh nobility surges forward with a renewed, desperate energy. They believe for a fleeting moment that they can win through sheer ferocity. The rebel centre thins, their knights reeling under the impact of the Welsh charge. The flower of Wales is proving why they were feared across the marches. But the trap has layers the Herberts cannot see. As the two sides are locked in their most desperate hour, a new force appears on the eastern hill of Culworth. They do not march, they appear like a nightmare from the shifting morning fog. They carry the banners of the Bear and Ragged Staff, the badge of Warwick himself. A Warwick! A Warwick! The cry is not a shout, it is a death knell that rolls across the plain. The exhausted Welshmen, who have been fighting for hours in the mud, believe the Kingmaker's entire main army has finally arrived to crush them. The psychological blow is more devastating than any arrow. Their formation, once a solid wall of iron, begins to dissolve from the edges inward as panic takes root. The fresh rebel reinforcements, led by John Clapham, fall upon the flank of the weary Yorkists like a hammer on glass. Men who had stood firm against the arrow storm now turn and flee into the marsh, where they are hunted down in the tall grass. The Yorkist army is shattered in a sudden chaotic collapse, a ruthless trap that was years in the making and seconds in the execution. The rout is a harvest of souls, a generation of leadership erased in an afternoon. As dawn breaks over Northampton the following morning, the silence on the battlefield is more profound than the noise of the conflict itself. The lone white lion standard of the Herberts lies trampled in the mud of Danes Moor, surrounded by the bodies of 168 nobles who will never see the mountains of Wales again. But the real gut punch of Edgecote is not found on the field, but at the foot of Queen Eleanor's Cross in the town of Northampton. There is no mercy in the heart of the Kingmaker. William and Richard Herbert are dragged to the scaffold, their armour dented and bloodied, their spirits finally broken by the unique treachery of their own side. With a final decisive blow, the executioner clears the path for Warwick's brief and bloody regency. The aftermath ripples through the kingdom like a shockwave. Within days, Earl Rivers and John Woodville are captured at Chepstow and executed at Coventry, their heads placed on the city gates. King Edward himself is now a prisoner in Warwick Castle, a captive of the very man who placed the crown on his head. One misjudged battle, one petty argument over an inn, has let Warwick's faction butcher the king's household and seize the kingdom by the throat. This victory will be spoken of in Welsh poetry for 100 years, a testament to the courage of the fallen and the ruthless calculation that builds and breaks empires. The defeat was a national calamity. The loss of the Herberts created a void that would change the course of English history. In the vacuum left by the fallen Yorkist elite, the seeds of a new dynasty were planted. A young ward of the Herberts, a boy named Henry Tudor, watches from the shadows of the march, learning the true cost of a crown and the price of loyalty. Edgecote was the rupture that proved the House of York could not survive its own internal divisions, leading directly to the final fire. Danes Moor remains today a site of quiet reflection, its marshy grounds still holding the secrets of the thousands who fell there. It serves as a stark reminder that in the Game of Thrones, the most dangerous enemy is often the one who knows your heart. The Battle of Edgecote was not just a clash of steel, but the moment the White Rose began to wither from within, clearing the long and bloody path to Bosworth and the rise of the Tudors. History is not just a list of dates, but a tapestry of human ambition and tragic mistakes. If you value the hard truths of the past and the cinematic stories of those who shaped our world, join us as we continue to uncover the secrets of the Wars of the Roses. Like this video to honor the fallen, and subscribe to our journey through the fires of history. Every story has a lesson. Make sure you're here to learn the next one.